Nathaniel Thornwell had written the letter in under 10 minutes. That probably should have told him something. He had kept it short, and without sentiment. A rancher in Callow Creek, 34 years of age, in need of a capable woman willing to work alongside him and keep a modest home. He had not described the land. He had not described himself. He had written the word quiet twice without noticing, and sent the letter before he could think too hard about what he was actually asking for. That was 4 months ago. The reply had come from a woman named Constance Hawthorne, out of a small town in eastern Tennessee. Her handwriting was measured and even. Her words were few. She said she was capable, that she had no objections to hard work, and that she would arrive on the 3rd Tuesday of the month if the arrangement suited him. But there was no warmth in the letter, no performance of eagerness. He had liked that about it. He told himself that was the only reason he said yes. He rode into town that Tuesday without any particular feeling about it. He tied his horse outside the general store, exchanged a few words with the postmaster, and walked to the stage stop with his hat pulled low and his hands in his pockets. He was not nervous. He was a man completing a practical errand. That was all. The stage came in 11 minutes late, which he noted with mild irritation. The first passenger off was an older man with a traveling case and a cough that sounded permanent. The second was a young mother with 2 children who hit the ground running before she could stop them. Nathaniel watched the door and waited. Then Constance Hawthorne stepped down, but he did not move for a moment. He was not entirely sure he breathed. She was not plain. That was the first thought, and it arrived with a kind of quiet alarm that he did not know what to do with. She was tall for a woman, composed in the way of someone who had learned composure the hard way. Her dress was practical and dark, road dusty at the hem. Her hair was pinned back with the efficiency of a person who did not spend time on such things. But none of that was what stopped him. It was the way she looked at Callow Creek, slowly, deliberately, like she was memorizing the exits before she had even set foot in the place. She found him before he found his voice. "Mr. Thornwell," she said. Not a question. "Miss Hawthorne," he managed. She looked at him the way a person looks at a door they are not sure they should open. And then she picked up her bag, a single worn leather bag that she kept close to her side, and nodded once. "I appreciate you coming," she said. "I won't take up more of your time than necessary." He did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing, which felt like the wrong choice and the only available one. They rode back to the ranch mostly in silence. Nathaniel kept his eyes on the road. He was not a man given to distraction, and he found it deeply inconvenient that he was distracted now. He ran through practical things in his mind: the south fence that needed mending, the supply order he had been putting off, the state of the kitchen which he had not thought to clean before today. None of it held his attention the way it should have. But Constance sat straight beside him and watched the land go by with that same quiet intensity she had shown in town. Once, when the wagon dipped into a rut and she caught herself against the seat, she checked the bag at her feet before she checked anything else. He noticed that. He filed it away without meaning to. The ranch house was modest, and he knew it. 2 rooms, a lean-to kitchen, a porch that faced west, and caught the evening light in a way that was the property's only real vanity. He had not apologized for it to anyone before. He found himself wanting to say something now, and stopped himself. She stepped down from the wagon and stood looking at the house for a long moment. "It's solid," she said finally. "It is," he agreed. "That's what matters." He was not sure if she was talking about the house, that she cooked that first evening without asking where anything was, finding each thing through quiet investigation, moving through his kitchen like she was reading a book she had not been given permission to open. The food was good, better than good. He ate without comment because complimenting it felt like it would open a conversation he was not ready to have. After supper, she washed the dishes, and he sat on the porch, pretending to read. When she was done, she came to the doorway and told him she would take the small room and that she did not need much. "All right," he said. "Mr. Thornwell." She paused. "I want to be useful here. That's genuinely all I want." He looked at her then. In the low evening light, her face was still, but there was something behind her eyes that moved, something careful and watchful and tired in a way that had nothing to do with the road. "I expect you will be," he said. She nodded and went inside. Nathaniel sat on that porch a long time after the lamp in her room went dark. The night was warm and the crickets were loud, and somewhere on the property an owl called once and went silent. He thought about the bag she never set down. He thought about the way she had looked at the exits, and he thought about a woman who said she wanted nothing more than to be useful, and how that was precisely the kind of thing a person said when what they truly wanted was to disappear. The first week passed the way early arrangements do, carefully, with too much politeness and not enough honesty. Constance was up before him every morning. He would come out to find the coffee already made and the kitchen already ordered, and some evidence of her having been awake for at least an hour before he arrived. He never heard her rise. He was a light sleeper, and had been for years, and the fact that she moved through the house without sound was something he noticed, but did not mention. She worked without being asked. She mended the curtain in the front room that had been torn since spring. She reorganized the pantry in a way that made immediate sense and that he was quietly grateful for. She learned the rhythm of the ranch with a speed that would have impressed him if he had not been busy being suspicious of it. That was the word he kept coming back to. Suspicious. Not of anything specific. Constance had done nothing wrong. She had done everything right. And somehow that was the thing that sat uneasy with him. In his experience, people showed their edges early. A person who had not shown a single edge in 7 days was either genuinely even-tempered or very carefully managed. Nathaniel Thornwell had known enough of the world to understand the difference between the two. He watched her the way he watched the sky before a storm. Not with fear, with attention. It was on the 8th day that the first crack appeared. He had ridden out to the north pasture before sunup to check on a section of fence that the wind had been testing all week. When he came back mid-morning, the ranch hand, and a quiet older man named George Sutton, who worked 3 days a week and kept mostly to himself, was standing near the barn with his hat in his hands, and an expression Nathaniel could not immediately read. "She all right?" Nathaniel asked, before he had fully dismounted. George nodded slowly. Ryder came through, stopped at the gate asking questions. Nathaniel looped the reins over the post. "What kind of questions?" "About the woman. Whether a woman had come to stay here recent. What she looked like." George turned his hat once in his hands. "I told him I didn't know what he was talking about." Nathaniel looked toward the house. The kitchen window was visible from where he stood, and through it he could see Constance moving, unhurried, as though the morning were ordinary. "He say who he was?" Nathaniel asked. "Said he was a cousin, looking for family." George's tone made clear what he thought of that explanation. Nathaniel thanked him and went inside. Constance was at the table shelling beans. She looked up when he came in and read something in his face immediately. He could see her read it, could see the small adjustment she made, the way her hand slowed without stopping. "There was a rider at the gate this morning," Nathaniel said. She did not flinch. She did not look away. She set down the pod in her hand with the deliberate care of someone making sure their fingers did not tremble. "What did he want?" she asked. "He was asking about a woman." The kitchen was very quiet. "What did you tell him?" she said. "I wasn't here. George sent him off." He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. "Constance." She looked at him. "I'm not going to ask you something you're not ready to answer," he said, "but I need to know if there's something coming toward this property that I should be prepared for." She was quiet for long enough that he thought she might not answer at all. "There's a man," she said finally. "He believes he has a claim on me. He does not. But he is not the kind of man who accepts that distinction." She picked the bean pod back up. "I did not come here to bring trouble to your door, Mr. Thornwell. That was never my intention." "Intentions don't always get a vote," he said. Something shifted in her expression. Not quite pain, not quite gratitude. Something in between that he did not have a word for. "No," she said quietly. "They don't." He sat with that for a moment. Outside, the wind moved through the yard, and the chickens complained about something, and the world continued in its ordinary way. "What's his name?" Nathaniel asked. She hesitated. "Aldrich. Harlan Aldrich." He did not know the name, but the way she said it, with a flatness that had been practiced over time, told him everything about what the name meant to her. "All right," he said. She looked up. "All right?" "I heard what you said. I'm not sending you back out on that road." He stood and pushed the chair in. "But I need you to stop moving through this house like you're waiting for permission to be here. If something's coming, we deal with it better, if I know what it looks like." He went back outside before she could respond. That evening, she came to the porch where he was sitting and stood at the railing, looking out at the darkening land. "I left Tennessee in the middle of the night," she said. She was not looking at him. "My father arranged a match with Harlan Aldrich 2 years ago. I was not consulted. When I said I would not go through with it, my father said I did not have that choice." She paused. "I decided I did." Nathaniel said nothing. He let her talk. "I answered your letter because it was the furthest advertisement I could find. I thought distance would be enough." She turned to look at him then. "I should have told you before I came. That was wrong of me, and I know it." He looked at her for a long moment. "Why didn't you?" he asked. "Because I was afraid you wouldn't take me," she said. Simply, without decoration. The honesty of it landed harder than he expected. "I need to ask you something," he said. She waited. "That bag you keep by you, but the one you haven't let out of arm's reach since you arrived." He held her gaze. "What's in it?" Constance Hawthorne looked at him for a long, steady moment. Then she went inside and came back with the bag and set it on the porch rail between them. She did not open it. Not yet. "Sit down, Mr. Thornwell," she said quietly. "There's more." He sat. She opened the bag. Inside, beneath a folded shawl and a small leather Bible, was a document. She drew it out carefully and set it on the rail between them. In the last of the evening light, he could see it was a land deed. He leaned forward and read the name on it. Constance Elaine Hawthorne. "That's my mother's land," she said. 40 acres in Greer County. She left it to me when she died, not to my father. He contested it for 2 years and lost. That was when he decided the fastest way to take what he couldn't inherit was to marry me to a man who would. She tapped the edge of the document. "Harlan Aldrich has been trying to get his hands on this piece of paper since before I even understood what it meant." Nathaniel sat back. The pieces arranged themselves quietly in his mind. The measured letters, the single bag, and the eyes that counted exits. None of it had been coldness. All of it had been survival. "Your father," he said carefully. "Is he the kind of man who stops?" "No," she said. "He is not." "And Aldrich?" She folded the deed and placed it back in the bag with the same careful hands. "Harlan Aldrich rode 300 miles after a woman who told him no. That should answer your question." It did. Nathaniel stood and walked to the edge of the porch and looked out at the dark property. The fence line he knew by heart, the barn, the road that came in from the west. He had built this place board by board over 11 years. He had buried a horse on the south end and planted a garden on the north that had never once cooperated with him. He knew every sound it made at night and every way it could be approached. He turned around. "I'm going to ride into town tomorrow and speak to the sheriff," he said. "I want it on record that you're here as my intended, and that any man who comes onto this property uninvited will be dealt with accordingly." Constance stared at him. "Your intended." "We have an arrangement," he said. "That's what we tell people, unless you have an objection." "You'd do that," she said slowly, "knowing what I just told you." "I told you I wasn't sending you back out on that road." He met her eyes. "I meant it both times." She looked at him with an expression he had not seen on her before, not the careful composure she wore like armor. Something underneath it, raw and uncertain and real. "Mr. Thornwell," she said, "I don't know how to accept something like that." "I don't need you to know how," he said. "I just need you to let me do it." Harlan Aldrich came on a Friday, 3 weeks later. He rode in through the front gate on a gray horse with 2 men behind him, and he had the easy confidence of someone who had never been told no by anyone with the authority to make it stick. He was broad-shouldered and well-dressed for the frontier, which told Nathaniel something about the kind of man he was, one who spent money on appearance in places where appearance had no practical value. Nathaniel was standing on the porch when they rode up. He did not come down to meet them. "I'm looking for a woman named Constance Hawthorne," Aldrich said. His voice was smooth and unhurried. "I have reason to believe she's here." "This is the Thornwell Ranch," Nathaniel said. "And the woman you're describing is my wife." The word landed in the yard between them, like something dropped from a height. Aldrich's easy expression did not disappear entirely. It just tightened at the edges. "That's so," he said. "Married 3 weeks ago. I have the paperwork if you'd like to see it." Nathaniel did not move from the porch rail. "Anything else I can help you with?" Aldrich looked at the house for a long moment. Then he looked back at Nathaniel with the eyes of a man recalculating. "Her father will want to know," he said finally. "Her father is welcome to write a letter," Nathaniel said. "She may or may not write back. That'll be her choice." There was a long silence. One of Aldrich's men shifted in his saddle. The gray horse shook its head against the flies. While then Aldrich turned his horse without another word and rode back through the gate the way he had come. His men followed. Nathaniel watched until the dust settled and the road was empty, and the only sound was the wind moving through the dry grass. He stayed on the porch a full minute after they disappeared. Then the front door opened, and Constance stepped out. She stood beside him and looked at the empty road and said nothing for a long time. "Is it over?" she asked. "For today," he said honestly. "Men like that don't always stop, but they look for easier targets. We made this one harder." She nodded slowly. He looked at her. She was still watching the road with those careful eyes, but something in them was different now. The counting of exits was still there. Maybe it would always be there. But underneath it was something that had not been there the morning she stepped off that stage. Something that looked a little like rest. They did marry. Not for paperwork, not for protection, but on a quiet Thursday morning in early November, with the sheriff as witness, and George Sutton standing by the barn door with his hat over his chest, because nobody had told him what to do, and that felt right to him. Constance wore her dark dress because it was the best one she had. Nathaniel wore a clean shirt and forgot to comb his hair, and she straightened it with her hand before they went inside, and neither of them mentioned it afterward. He gave her the deed box, a proper locked one, solid oak, to keep the land document in. She kept it on the shelf in their room, where she could see it from the bed. And she planted a garden on the north end of the property the following spring. It cooperated with her immediately, which Nathaniel found both impressive and personally offensive. By the second summer, there was a child, a boy with his father's quiet and his mother's watchful eyes, who learned to walk by holding onto the porch rail and fell down 11 times before he decided falling was no longer acceptable. Constance laughed at that, really laughed, the kind that came without warning and stayed longer than expected. Nathaniel decided that was the best sound the ranch had ever made. He never told her that. She knew anyway. If slow-burn frontier stories are the kind that stay with you, there are more waiting. New ones, told at the same pace, every week.